This is honestly a shocking story. The first time I read the story, I kind of like just kind of grazed over and I skimmed through it and I was like, okay, well, yeah, it's propaganda. Okay, fair enough. But then when I sat down and actually read through it, I thought to myself, oh my God, how are you admitting to this? And not just admitting to this, what does it mean that one story after the next, after the next, after the next, you carried it uncritically? Your framing of all of this stuff that has been taking place has been shaped by the Biden administration, and I'm talking about mainstream media. You've uncritically accepted wartime propaganda without ever asking the very basic ethical requirement question of, is it true? Is it true? Does it even sound true? Does it even feels true if you really had to just think about it? If you were a person sitting on the moon looking at events, you've basically written a story that screams, we're fucking idiots. We're fucking idiots. That's what the story is. And you are framing it as if this is some celebration of propagandistic tool political gamesmanship. You've wrote a story that owned up to the fact that you are pushing lies to the American public, knowingly pushing lies. One or two things are true. Either you are indeed fucking idiots because you didn't necessarily ask the very basic question, and honestly, some of this stuff doesn't even sound true. Or you're not idiots. You're entirely complicit. You decide which one of those are worse. But the story that NBC News is running is owning up to the fact that the Biden administration has been lying to the American public. And the media has been carrying one lie after the next, after the next. And they would cast it in, oh, we're doing this to get in Putin's head. Think about what you're saying for the moment as you recount that. Putin knows you're lying. He knows you're lying. The stuff that you put out to the American public, he's not shocked, perturbed, put off, or even care about what you dispense as propaganda to your public. Even arguing that in order to justify lying to the American public, it seems so ridiculous on its face. And yet, this is the mainstream media that just wrote the article screaming, the administration has been lying to us and we've been carrying those lies to the American public. It is your philosophical, ethical, even professional responsibility to give a certain level of truth and contextual reality to the American public. There may be a schoolboy version of media, but that is a version of media that I cling to, like grim death. It is your responsibility to do that. That is a magnificently important responsibility. They call you the fourth estate for a reason, because it is the necessity. How do you know in a democratic government what your government is doing if indeed you don't have somebody getting behind the scenes to basically tell you what is going on? And what happens when it gets to the point where the stories that are coming out aren't news and media and investigation? It's not that. It's our job is to now carry the water of state. And in carrying the water of state, whatever state and the party says is true, that is indeed what we will report, and we would do so uncritically. Is that your job? Is that your responsibility to do that, to carry water? And what does it mean when you carry water in such a way that positions this country that much more in an adversarial relationship with a country that is nuclear powered? You're failing in your job. That's the point that I'm getting at. And this article, the entire article, screams at how bad you have done your job. Or I should say, not done your job at all. The idea that the administration would lie over and over and over, and you would carry those lies. And not just carry those lies, put those lies in framing as if there's some reality to it, even when there is nothing to back it up. And when somebody finally asks the question of, hey, where are you getting that? You flip out. You flip out. You flip out. This is kind of like the Biden and the black person thing, right? What Biden says, if you don't vote for me, or if you're not voting for me, you're not black. They've gotten so accustomed to African Americans wasting away their vote without getting anything in return for that vote, that they basically accepted this premise that, well, black people vote for us, and it's almost owed. The media has gotten so accustomed, or the Biden administration has gotten so accustomed to media just accepting whatever they're told, that the moment that one of the media people gently pushes back, they flip out. I mean, I'm talking about the net price stuff, right? Where he's asked, where's the evidence for that? You just made that shit up. And media flips out and he says, the evidence is what I'm telling you right now. I can give you a readout of this. That's evidence. And of course, it is the most ludicrous thing on the planet to believe that the propagandist that is going to write down the propaganda is somehow transformed into real evidence when the propagandist writes it down. It doesn't. It does not. I'm going to show you the article. And I'm going to take you through the article. Like I said, it's a shocking article. It's astonishing that they're even owning up to how bad they've done their job. And then to frame literal propaganda, as some kind of tool of information warfare. As if you can frame everything, even horrible things, as in some kind of way they were transmute it into something that is positive because of the way you frame it in real world terms. No. The reality of it is the Biden administration has been lying over and over and over again, and the media has carried those lies over and over and over again. And now they're trying to cast it as if this is some level of information warfare. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, of course, subscribe. You can also do super chats at this point. Those are turned on. Yeah, it bugs the hell out of me. And yes, I do hold on to the schoolboy version of the newsman as being the integrity in the entirety of the process. It is weird to me. Weird is maybe not the right word for it. It's unfortunate, let's put it that way. That's not the way they look at their jobs. They look at their jobs as being more important to carry the water of state as opposed to deal with the responsibilities professionally and, for that matter, ethically to the constituents that basically watch them as they basically spew the nonsense of state. Just because state is saying something doesn't necessarily mean it's in the best interest of the population. In fact, the matter is with the Ukrainian stuff, one step after the next, one decision after the next, inextricably has led us to this very specific point. And no, none of this is in our interest. None of the stuff is in the value set from the standpoint of the regular American who wants to go about their day, live their life, play their Xbox, do their YouTube videos, have sex with some random woman at the store. All of those things are just part of a life. This grandiose idea of knocking over governments in order for this kind of geopolitical chessboard, that is not. And fact of the matter is what the media should be reporting is a contextual understanding of the events that have led up to this point, however it cuts. This is what took place. Is this correct? Allow the American public to make a choice one way or the other, because my contention is if they got the contextual point of view, they will be outraged that these people are screwing around in countries in such a way. And at the very least, gray up that white hat, black hat nonsense that these guys are trying to report. This is the article, NBC News. In a break with the past, even that, in a break with the past, because we didn't use propaganda in the past. Get the hell out of here. U.S. is using intel to fight an info war with Russia, even when the intel isn't rock solid. Oh, you mean even when they're lying? Even when they just drop out information that's BS and bogus? That's what you mean. One more point. The irony of this. Ken Delanian. Do you know who Ken Delanian is? Ken Delanian got fired from the LA Times because he was a CIA collaborator in the stories that he was putting out. All right. So it's not shocking then that the framing is going to be in line with how awesome propaganda is. Propaganda is just fantastic. That's what propaganda is. President Joe Biden later said, right here, it was an attention-grabbing assertion that made headlines around the world. U.S. officials said they had indications suggesting Russia might be preparing to use chemical agents in Ukraine. President Joe Biden later said it publicly, but 3 U.S. officials told NBC News this week there is no evidence Russia has bought any chemical weapons near Ukraine. They said the U.S. released information to deter Russia from using banned munitions. Is it information if they just made it up? Is it information if they just made it up? Hey, I am sitting here with no pants on. There's some information. Actually, I do have pants on. But I'm making the point that if I just make shit up, is that really information? I think your standard of information is far too low. They just lied. They just lied. Call it what it is. And I love the way you cast that, frame it. Oh, they gave him this information. They just lied, and you carried that lie. There was no indication that that lie was true, and you would think that you would ask the secondary question of where are you getting that from, but apparently they didn't do that. They didn't do that. Let's keep going. There's more. I mean, they own up to more stuff. President Joe Biden, right here. In a string of examples, the Biden administration is breaking with recent precedent by deploying declassified intelligence as part of an information war against Russia. The administration has done so even when the intelligence wasn't rock solid, the official said. Right here, to keep Russia President Vladimir Putin off balance. Think about that. Think about that. They're arguing that the Biden administration, now keep in mind, the first example was a lie. It was just an outright lie. And they're saying, hey, they're releasing these lies and propaganda to the media in order to keep Vladimir Putin off base. That's why they're doing it. That's why they're doing it. Because Vladimir Putin is entirely swayed by basic lies coming out of the Biden administration. Are you insane? Like, the fact that you even write that is weird. Like, maybe it's one of those things that they just believe people to just read it and they just absorb it and they walk away from it and they just repeat exactly what they read without actually sitting down and thinking whether or not it makes sense. This makes zero sense. You're justifying lying to the American public, lies that you entirely carried over and over and over again. That's what you're justifying. And the way you're trying to do that is by saying Vladimir Putin was somehow swayed by these lies. As if he didn't know that they were in fact lies. Observers have called the stripes, they've called it bold and so far successful strategy. Okay, now why do they think it was successful? Let's keep going. Quote, it's the most amazing display of intelligence as an instrument of state power that I have seen and that I've heard since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Tim Weiner, author of the 2006 History of the CIA in 2020s, The Folly and the Glory, a look at U.S.-Russia rivalry over the decades. Quote, it certainly blunted and diffused disinformation weaponry by the Kremlin, said as he touched himself and tweaked his nipples. Why do you think that? Why do you think that? Why do you think that? I don't know why they think that. What evidence do they have of that? Meaning, in an article where they are owning up to basically carrying water for the White House by basically presenting lies without anything under it, they are once again presenting information without anything under it. How weird is that? It's almost like a meta narrative. It's almost like The Matrix, where they have a meta story within the context of the story. It's like that. It's like a Russian doll, no pun intended, of lies built upon each other. And almost in the fact of them admitting it, it almost confers a little bit of feeling of truthfulness to it. Despite the fact that as they admit it, they have nothing under it to base the stuff that they're saying under it. It's just their use and their means, the tool, the widget that they basically use to justify lying to the American public en masse over and over and over again. That is astonishing that you're writing the story. It is shocking that you're writing the story and owning up to that. We have failed magnificently in our ethical and professional responsibilities as news people to basically give the public a contextual understanding of their world. Instead, we decided to just push state propaganda. Not just said in the flamboyant, euphoric way or hyperbolic way. No. Literal, flat, fact, state propaganda. That's what we have been dispensing for the White House. And now we need to justify and explain that. So we're going to say this is a tool of information warfare to fight the Russians. Yeah, I don't buy it. I mean, this is so utterly pathetic. The idea is to preempt and disrupt Kremlin's tactics, complicate its military campaign, undermine Moscow's propaganda, and prevent Russia from defining how the war is perceived in the world, said a Western government familiar with the strategy. Dude, I will tell you this. If if you're in a military campaign, what you are more concerned with is how it's going on the ground. And if it is going on the ground well, where I've shown the numbers before and the number of materials and everything else that have been blown up, NATO running out of weaponry to kill Russians, Ukraine offering concessions. They care about what's going on the ground. In Western nations where they can eliminate RT or eliminate Sputnik, destroy the alternate opinion, destroy alternate voices that are questioning what these guys have been doing in the world. That's what they have been doing as they all accrued around one narrative of events. They would call themselves a democracy. They would say those countries are illiberal democracies as they destroy alternate points of view. So when you're making this case about putting out robust and unending propaganda is our way of trying to confuse Vladimir Putin. Let's just be very clear. You're talking about lying so much and so voluminously that the public and everything else has a skewed view of what is going on in the world and hopes, by your logic anyway, that Putin somehow sheds a tear over it, that he is unclear and cares greatly about the rest of the world is perceiving from the standpoint of the war. Do you honestly believe that Vladimir Putin is unclear that the West is eliminating sources of information in the context of NATO and in the United States? Meaning, he has no power over what goes on from the standpoint in the United States in regards to the information that's being dispensed. If anything, he has very little power in that sense. They can eliminate alternate sources of information, which is basically what they did. Why is he going to care about something that he has very little control over? What he cares about is accomplishing his military objectives. Again, they are using a weak argument to try to justify why this grotesque level of propaganda, where they have basically tried to destroy reality itself in order to absolve the culpability of the United States and NATO nations in what is taking place in this kind of grand geopolitical chessboard that these guys have been doing for the last 40 years or so. That's what they're saying. And that's what they're trying to justify it with. And yeah, a CIA propagandist, Ken Delanian, is one of the co-signers who basically got fired from the LA Times. It makes all the sense in the world that this article is going to frame it in this way. Multiple U.S. officials acknowledged that the United States has used information as a weapon, even as confidence in the accuracy of the information wasn't high. Sometimes it was used low confidence information for deterrent effect, as with the chemical weapons, and other times the official was put it, the U.S. is just, quote, trying to get into Putin's head. The low confidence report was used for the very specific reason that it was low confidence. It was a lie. They knew it was a lie. They put it out there for that very specific effect. And then he says, sometimes we were just trying to get in Putin's head. In what way? Why do you believe that your lying to the American public or to the European public is somehow screwing with Putin? And that in and of itself justifies flagrant and grotesque lying to the American public. And the fact that the media carried one lie after the next, after the next, after the next, over months of this conflict. It's 2 months at this point. How does that not? The person who's people are writing this, if there's anything in you that is ethical, if there's anything in you that is some level has an integrity to the profession itself, how does it not hurt you as you type these words to give to the American public to get across the level, the degree, the Herculean extent to which you have utterly and entirely failed in your ethical and professional responsibilities to the American public? How does that not break you on some level as you write this? That's astonishing. You guys have been carrying lies, and I've been telling the public that you have been lying, grotesquely so. And people would look at me and say, okay, maybe, man. Because, of course, we're Russian propaganda, right? And yet, I've been more right about this entire stuff. Because at the end of the day, my role is to be the integrity. I have a schoolboy, philosophical, ethical point of view in regards to doing media. And while I may be faulted or fail in other aspects of life, on this, I will definitely try to be true. In this very specific case, these people have been lying to you. whether that lying has been because they are useful idiots, or whether that's because of an ideological disposition to represent the interests of state. Even if that meant lying to the public, you choose which one it is. They are basically owning up to it. And no, the excuses that they have are ridiculous. It's appalling. After the story was published, a U.S. official told NBC News that the U.S. government effort to strategically downgrade intelligence to share with allies and the public is underpinning a rigorous review process in the National Security Council. So let me get this straight. In an article where you basically have owned up to lying continuously to the American public, you're now putting in this disclaimer of, yeah, even though we've been lying to you to get in Putin's head and all this other stuff, it has a rigorous review process. Are you? They just think the American public are meat with eyes. Meat and eyes. The biggest success of the U.S. information offense may have been delaying the invasion by weeks itself or months, which officials believe they did with accurate predictions that Russia intended to attack based on definitive intelligence. By the time Russia moved its troops, the West presented a united front. Right here. Two biggest successes of the U.S. information offensive may have been delaying the invasion itself by weeks or months. Which one is it? Is it either, or is it none? And the fact that you added may gets across that it's most likely none. You have nothing to back this up. Once again, in a story that discusses how they have been lying to the American public with nothing to back up the things that they have been saying, they are giving you, once again, stuff with nothing to back up the things they're saying, but their own ego and their own emotional gratification at saying it. Look how brilliant we are. We were able to stop them from weeks and months. Maybe we were. These motherfuckers. A former U.S. official said administration officials believe the strategy delayed Putin's invasion from the first week of January to after the Olympics, and the delay bought the U.S. valuable time to get allies on the same page in terms of the level of the Russian threat and how to respond. Is it that where your lies and propaganda delayed Putin, or is it, in real terms, that he was trying to get an agreement for all of those months for this conflict not to take place? Think back. Whatever you want to think back. Putin kept saying, we need you to be non-aligned. We need you to not join NATO. We need you to say it. We need you to say it. We need you to say it. Nobody would say it. Nobody would do it. Despite the fact that behind the scenes, all of them had already agreed that Ukraine wasn't going to be part of NATO. None of them would say it. Not one of them would say it. All of them was puff off their chests and how big and strong they are, willing completely to fight to the last dead Ukrainian. The U.S. being safely away, watching this fire basically take place. And the dickheads in Europe that basically went along with this program for all of these years, watching Europe at war. Once again, the U.S. safely away, with the majority of the consequences, once again, just like the Iraq War, just like the Syrian War, hitting Europe. It's astonishing, utterly astonishing. And they are writing this article. It's hard to get across how indignant I am about this. They are writing an article about how they were okay with propaganda and writing it in these flowery terms to somehow justify lying to the American public in mass, in voluminous mass, all for the issues of state. Never at once asking the question of, is this true? They just carried it. And now they're owning up to the fact that they did that and using these kind of weak justifications of, this is just information warfare. They were lying. They were lying. This is so astonishing that they're writing this article. Yes, it's true, but God, the fact that you would even own up to this and then try to justify it. The degree to which Putin is isolated or relying on flawed information can't be verified. Well, if you remember, they were like, Putin had been by himself for years. He had been talking to anybody. He was just, alienated from his military. And he was getting such bad information. And of course, people like me were like, why do you think that? Why do you think that? What gave you that impression? Well, intelligence said it. Why does the intelligence think that? What is the veracity of this intelligence? Where did they get that information from? And I got to be honest, I am very skeptical of anything that comes out of the West. But it's because of this. Because it was clear right off the bat, these self-serving narratives, that they were basically just flagrantly lying. Intelligence official said, some other government official said. None of that stuff gets verified per se. They just carry whatever they give it. It's appalling. They're basically stenographers as opposed to being basically news people. And this article gets that across in spades. And then, as if they don't quite get the gravity and the astonishing nature of the story that they are basically writing and admitting to, gives very weak reasons for why it's okay. It's framed as if it's okay. It's not okay. They're lying to the American public, and they're doing this shit. Whether it's intentional or idiotic, I don't know which one. You make the choice. Two U.S. officials said the intelligence about whether Putin's inner circle was lying to him wasn't conclusive. No shit. No shit, Sherlock. No duh. No duh. Based on analysis and hard evidence, the official disputed that, saying intelligence was very reliable and had been vetted at the highest levels. Likewise, a charge that Russia had turned to China for potential military help lacked hard evidence, a European official and two U.S. officials said. I also told you that story was going to be nonsense. As that story came out, again, another self-serving narrative trying to tie Russia and China together on this stuff. It's amazing how the news stories that come out fall in line with state. And yet, they would look at other state media and say, oh, that's problematic. These guys were basically running. Whether they're state media or not is irrelevant to the point. If you're just going to carry whatever state says as being true. And that is not your job. That is decidedly not your job. Your job is to get the information that they don't necessarily want the public to have, to give the public a legitimate and a real picture of the world, preferably contextual, so they can make choices in regards to who they want to lead that country, or for that matter, the movements they want to get behind. But you don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm going to leave it here because I don't want this to go too long, and I think it's already gone too long, and I'm highly annoyed by this article. And the more I read it, the worse it gets. So I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe, and we have Daniel Alevi. Now, every time we see your videos, Jamarl, we think you don't have pants on. No, I have pants on, I promise you. I can't do videos without pants on. Like, when you're doing a video, there's a certain presence that you have as you're kind of engaging the audience. Okay. You have to be put together in your head, at least me anyway, to do the job. I don't quite understand those people who can do videos with no pants on, because at the very least in their heads, I have no pants on. So it's not that. I don't know how people do that, if I'm being honest, but I'm supposed clearly people can do it. All right, I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, and I'm going to say subscribe. Thanks all. I'll see you in a few.